Morning.
Okay, so most of you know us. I'm Ms. Mallery. I teach this year. I've been teaching kindergarten to 3rd grade science.
And I'm Ms. Seitz. I've been teaching 4th to 6th grade. I know some of you don't know.
Pretty bright.
I know.
Ariana? It's not. Okay, I was going to have her move the slide. Okay, this is good. So just quickly, we're going to talk about inquiry, we're going to talk about standards, curriculum, and a little more information about the upper grades because they're newer, and then assessment. I think you guys are pretty familiar with what inquiry is. But basically, it's asking questions about the world. So those are kindergartners wondering what makes something a living thing. And there we're looking at soil samples, 2nd graders looking at soil samples. We took soil samples from lots of different kids' yards and then did shake tests of them and compared and contrasted them.
And the previous slide was a 6th grader looking at energy transfers. So, part of engaging kids in inquiry is asking a lot of questions. And what I always say to them is, don't ask me what the answer is. I'm not that interested in the answer. I'm interested in your thinking. And then we'll all put it together at the end of this lesson or unit. Because they get so worried, like, did I get it right? Did I get it right? And like, I want to hear thinking. How are you getting to that point? So inquiry involves a lot of that. We need the thing. And these pictures show some of my students involved in inquiry. This slide here is really cool because that's an independent project that we do after the egg drop. Everyone knows the egg drop. So the kids have to kind of look at a real world problem and find a solution to it. And these guys said, when I'm having dinner and doing my homework at the same time, because that happens sometimes, I gotta pick up the fork and then I gotta get the pen. So they designed some utensils that were part utensil and part pen. So, and these are their prototypes. So they're like, and I thought it was really cute. And we got a lot of kind of ideas out of things that are part of their lives, and they wanted to make their lives simpler. The girls here, I just love when kids take science home with them. I just talked about pine cones and how the seeds are kind of tucked inside, because they're like, where are the seeds in a pine cone? So the girls found one, and they came in the next day, Miss Seitz, look, and they're shaking it, the seeds, look. So I love when they take it home with them and then come back and show me something. And this is a 5th grade class where we did floating cups with pennies on water and how many pennies would certain size cups hold. And then they started going, would this work the same way on milk? Would this work the same way on soda? I'm like, I don't know, let's do it. So that was their question, their inquiry. So we had a whole bunch of different liquids, all kinds of strange things. And it actually kind of works out the same way. It didn't really matter that much, but it was fun to do.
And the low grade parents might not know what the egg drop is, but so the 5th graders designed, it's 5th grade, right? 6th graders designed containers that would keep an egg whole from falling from fairly large, great height.
4th floor. Which is really fun, because I'm out there hanging out the window, and they're down there looking. Mr. Michael's videotaping the whole thing. And, some will survive, but many won't, and then they get to redesign that container to try to be successful the second time. Like, what went wrong? What could I have done better? Learn from other kids' successes. It's really fun. So I'm sure you heard about the next generation science standards, and I'm often thinking about them, like, did we adopt those yet, or what's going on with that?
It's
It's sort of the core curriculum for science, a new way of looking at science, which has a lot of engineering in it. So BSI, we're kind of combining the New York City scope and sequence, and that, even though we really haven't adopted it yet, even though New York was one of the lead states in developing this, they're still kind of sitting on their hands about it. And there was a Board of Regents meeting in January where they talked about, well, we got to go back to the drawing board because we think we want to implement some of that and some of our own thing. So they still haven't adopted it, and only 12 states have so far have officially adopted those standards. But we use those standards in everything we do.
The standards are very similar. The curriculum is different at different ages for the next generation science standards. So even though I haven't changed all the curriculum, for example, this year I'm lucky enough to have first grade twice a week, so I added an engineering unit into the first grade curriculum because I know a physics unit, it's an engineering and physics, into the first grade curriculum because I know that actually in kindergarten in the next generation science standard there's more physics. So I'm just testing it out and getting things ready. If they do adapt it, then I'll know what to do.
That's just more of what I just said.
So they just start, basically, so there's science process skills, and there's a continuum, and they change as the kids age. And the curriculum sort of repeats itself. For example, in 3rd grade, there's simple machines, and in 6th grade, there's simple machines. Ecosystems happens over and over and over again. But the way that the kids process it change as they get older. So kindergarten and 1st grade is a lot of observing and describing, and they get a lot of descriptive language, and they learn about their senses, and they use their senses a lot. And then as they get older, they start to estimate and measure more. 1st grades start estimating in their little engineering unit. They measure, the 1st graders start to measure the temperature on a thermometer. Even though the math standards, they're still using non-standard units of measurement in 1st grade. And then by 3rd grade, they're starting to design their own experiments. And I'm doing that a little bit in 2nd grade this year. And then you can see it just gets more and more complicated as they get older.
So it's deeper.
And I want to speak just to that whole idea of the continuum, because there's a lot is being said very quickly, and I think sometimes parents have a question about what are those, how do we teach to the standards? And I heard something, I was watching in my spare time the other day, an expeditionary learning video, and I love the way that they describe standards as, it's almost like someone comes and fills your refrigerator and your pantry with a ton of ingredients. And what we do, so those are the standards. And then what you do is you figure out, what am I going to make? What recipe am I going to use? What ingredients will I use? And what am I going to make? And what are the kids going to make that's going to be thoughtful, reflective, fun? You heard Sharon say the word fun a few times, but and where they're going to learn something, right? It's not really just about the fun. Now, the business of the standards repeating themselves, or the curriculum repeating themselves, you heard Sid say, well, 3rd graders do simple machines and then they come back in 6th grade and do that. That's really known as spiraling curriculum. And the reason why that's so important, it's even with adults, the way that we learn, the first time you hear something, you have, depending upon where you're at, what Vygotsky would call your zone of proximal development, you're going to take in a certain amount of information from the first time you hear something, right? And then when you circle back to it, and that circle gets, as Sharon just said, deeper, your understanding is going to become more secure. So it's no longer just a developing goal, it's a secure goal. So all that prior knowledge that may have come from the first time that you came into something in 3rd grade is really going to go much deeper in the 6th grade, right? And even in the egg drop experiment, what you heard where the 6th graders designed housing to try and protect that egg from the free fall for flights. I think there was one student, right? How many eggs survived?
Our first group, I think we only had about, one.
I think it was one, because it was in my advisory, I think.
And then we did it, and we had about 7 or 8.
And so there, when all of this about inquiry, and a lot of this has to do with what people are, refer to as STEM, And at our school we called it STEAM because we like to be humanities and art. STEAM. I feel like I've had one too many when I try to say that word. And so I just wanted to give like a little background stuff about this because it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. Sorry.
Thank you.
Right, so when I say physics in kindergarten physics is like, how does stuff move? How does it move? Like, how can I make this thing move? Like it's not torque. So, but that is a foundation for what comes later. So with that in mind, we just wanted to quickly go through the curriculum, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with if you looked at what's that thing we did, the syllabi? But basically kindergarten does trees, animals, and properties of matter, and it's a lot of looking at things and seeing what they notice about them, observing them, learning what observation means, and learning to describe with their senses. A big life science thing that they get is, what is a living thing, and that's kind of a overarching thing that I do in kindergarten for the year. I also do some slightly obnoxious songs, so if they're singing, things, just go with it. Okay, next slide. First grade spends a lot of time on matter. And then Invent a Wheel is the new unit that I did this year in which they invented the wheel. And that was the physics unit. And it's also an engineering unit. So they do a little bit of the engineering process, like how can I make a sled, which is a piece of cardboard, that will go down this ramp. And then it turns into, it'll go down a lot easier if there's wheels on the sled. And then their earth science is weather, and life science is animals again. This time it's animal diversity. So they start looking more closely at the animals and say, why does the stick bug shape like a stick? And how does that help the stick bug live? Okay, second grade is my favorite. It's really great. They do earth materials. Mostly developmentally appropriate earth materials for second grade is rock sizes and the properties of rocks. I do go into, because they go back in 5th grade and they do the earth science again, and it's the spiral. But I do go in a little bit into the types of rocks because we do have some rock hounds. I'm one myself, and I share my rock collection that I've been collecting forever with them, and they get really into it. Right now we're doing balance and motion, and they're developing an experiment about tops and what can make a top be more stable. And then in life science, they do plants in second grade. And we look a lot at, how do plants grow? Where do they come from? Because most of them know that seeds can grow plants, but like what else? How else can plants grow? So they look into that. That's very great. Third grade gets more complicated in third grade. It's a little harder. We start off with I call it data collection for science, and it's really a study of matter, and it's a lot of measurement, so that they're ready for the upper grades and doing all the science work, all the measuring that's required in science for the upper grades. And they learn the difference between quantitative data and qualitative data. And then we do, the energy unit is another engineering unit, so they design their own wind-up toys. And they learned about energy in the context of the wind-ups. And they do develop and design an experiment about the wind-ups and how they go. And they do their first lab report in third grade. There's a life science, but we can again, it's plant and animal diversity, and again, it's back to the forms and the structures. But this time, it's like their habitats, because they're studying in social studies. They're studying the world, all these different world communities and different continents. And so it's like, how does this structure and help this animal in China? How does this structure help this animal, in the rainforest and in relation to their habitat?
So then in 4th grade, the life sciences, we talk more about the interconnectedness of everything. And we study food webs in various ecosystems. Because they've heard the word habitat a lot, but sometimes they confuse habitat and ecosystem. And I always say, I'm a bird, my habitat is this tree, my ecosystem is the deciduous forest, which is kind of a bigger thing. They learn that when something happens to one element of a food web, that it can mess up the whole ecosystem. Again, that anything that happens, it's just all connected. Everything's connected, and how
because it really goes along with the fourth grade social studies curriculum again, because they're doing well, they start off with Native Americans, and it's like, how did these people survive in their habitat, basically? And that's how they, and then how are we surviving in our habitat? And what was their relationship to the land, and what's our relationship to the land? And it totally ties into the ecosystems in a really nice way.
Right now we're doing a physics unit about magnetism and electricity, and how those are also connected. We'll make electromagnets to see that. We'll be doing circuits, magnetic fields. And then earth science, it's a big study of water, physical properties of water, the water cycle. Also, I want to talk about pollution of water and conservation of water, and the importance of water, and that is tying into my 6th grade curriculum right now. We're looking at how water shapes the land, and how water is in different reservoirs throughout the earth. It's not a reservoir like a human-made basin. The atmosphere is a reservoir for water. A glacier is a reservoir for water. So they're getting their foundation of water here, and then we're going to go back to it more later in 6th grade.
And I also want to add that study of water fits very nicely into the 4th grade Explorers unit, where they're studying systems, right? And they're going to have to design, I think they've already been assigned this, they're going to have to design, any 4th grade parents here right now? Yeah, so they have to design an invention that would have been helpful for the explorers, right? Whether they're Hudson or Verrazzano. And so that, again, I'll come back to this later after these guys finish, but that whole idea of STEM, that whole idea of the interconnectedness of everything the kids are learning.
I always like going to that celebration because they often use simple machines in their inventions, so it's nice to see them doing that stuff.
And water also involves weathering, erosion, and sediments. We do just like mini lessons on that, because I'm going to come back to that later too. In the 5th grade, we spend a lot of time on just the scientific process and experiments and investigations. But this year I wanted to kind of show them what the scientific method is, but I don't want them to think science is the rigid scientific method. You know, first I have a question, then I make a hypothesis, da-da-da-da. I wanted to show that there are different entry points to thinking about science. And so I brought in bird study this year, and I brought in some technology looking at bird feeders up in Ithaca, New York at Cornell using a webcam. And so the kids are you're going to see the kids at all these things today bringing in their projects. And they looked at these bird feeders on their own, just wrote down what they saw, and then we brainstormed questions, and they came up with their own investigations. What they wanted to
down
study.
the hallway during
Yeah.
the 5th grade homeroom, and I hear, it's a deer, Miss Mallery, it's a deer! And
Yeah.
I'm looking there, and
They'll see a deer.
they're looking at a live feed of a deer walking up to the bird feeder.
It's an awesome thing, just for fun. Go to allaboutbirds.org. Just if you're feeling stressed out, look at the bird feeders. I tell the kids it's like my window. It's my picture window. So that's been really exciting for me this year, doing that. We're going to cover some food and nutrition. We're going to do the chemistry of food, like how do you determine what fat is in it? How do we find out what sugar is in something? We're going to do a little chemistry. Learn about the digestive system since we're talking about food. We're going to again go to ecosystems and a little deeper on the human activity, like how it really impacts ecosystems. And we're going to do some lab work with water environments and land environments, and then take that and relate it to the real world. We're doing this stuff in a fish tank. We're doing this stuff in a terrarium, but these are just models for the real world out there. 6th grade, we spent a lot of time on energy transfers and energy conversions this year. You know, Sidger had given them a foundation in the potential and kinetic energies, but then we just started looking at different kinds of energy and how it doesn't like, they think it changes into this other thing. Like, no, it's actually transferring in, and the whole idea of the law of conservation of energy, that it doesn't go away or get created. It's kind of fixed, and it just moves around into different ways, like mechanical energy, or I bounce a ball, you know, potential to kinetic to elastic, back to kinetic to potential, and then it loses some out of the system to sound and friction, because it's hitting the floor. And it can get kind of complicated, but after a while they really got the hang of it and how energy's fixed and it's just moving around. Earth science, we're going to do, I think there was some 5th grade landforms unit, but I'm kind of putting it into 6th grade now because we're using a new curriculum for 6th grade. Sangari, it's an iQuest curriculum, and we're studying national park systems right now, so they're learning what case studies are. And as a class, we're studying Grand Canyon and Hawaii Volcanoes National Parks. Those are our case study parks. And then each group gets an assigned park that they're going to do a big project on. And they're going to show us how they know what the reservoirs of water are in that park and how that water shaped that park. Why is Bryce Canyon so gorgeous like that with all those hoodoos? You know, why are there certain caves in another park? So they're going to understand that. And we're going to have a science roundtable on that. And then the life sciences, again, now we're in biomes. Now it's not just habitats and ecosystems, it's bigger, it's biomes. And climate, I'm taking a climate change course right now at Museum of Natural History. And I'm going to write a unit on climate change. Because even adults, even myself, in the media, it's so simplified for us, and it's so much more complicated than even I thought, and how much the ocean plays a role in climate change. And I think we get sound bites about climate change, and I don't think we will totally understand it. So I'm going to try to come up with that unit. I want to use that next year. And then STEM is one of the concentrations that kids get to test out or taste in 6th grade, and these are some of the girls doing their egg drop. I talked a little bit about it before, but they do a performing arts taste, and they do a visual arts taste. And then in 7th grade, they get to choose a concentration that they want to do for 7th and 8th grades. We talked about this before, so we can move on.
So we just wanted to compare what might be happening in a traditional elementary science class to what's happening at BSI. So in a lot of science, in the schools that are lucky enough to have a science teacher in elementary school, they for their energy unit, they do it mostly on sound energy, and they do some fun investigations with, you know, dropping things and listening to the different sounds that it makes and pitch and volume. And then they, you know, get some content, they read some books, watch videos, and maybe do a little project on it. And then at BSI, there we go. So at BSI, I already told you about this. We have the wind-up unit where they don't go through the whole engineering process because I'm giving them the problem that they're trying to solve, but they basically plan and design. They plan it, they design it, they make it, they try it out, they fix it with the wind-up toys. And while they're doing that, they're learning. So what it is, it's a cup. You probably have seen it if your child's in 3rd grade. So it's a cup with a rubber band on the inside and a stick, and you wind the stick, and your kinetic energy of moving the stick is putting potential energy into the rubber band. Elastic. Elastic energy. Elastic energy into the rubber band. So then you hold it, it's not moving, but there's that potential that when you let go, it's going to release and it's going to move, and you let it go and it actually rolls across the floor. So then they design an experiment about it. So basically, like, they learn the word variable and like what variable could we change that might change how far the wind-up will go. And so I'm adding on to the data collection, the measuring, because now they have to measure this wacky wind-up, and sometimes they go diagonally and sometimes they break dance. So how do we measure that? And so the kids made this up. It's not part of the unit. They wanted to do how does the mass of the wind-up windup affect how far it will go. And the way that they designed that was they put beans, they weighed on a pan balance the windups, then they added beans until it was a certain number of grams more than the standard windup, and then they compared those two windups. But all of that with the energy still in mind. And then we do some sound energy stuff, and we do some light energy and some heat energy stuff. And then we also do the simple machines unit, and the other schools do simple machines too. But that adds on to the energy.
I was just going to piggyback on what you just said about math. The kids came up with that question. I think it's really important to not worry about, am I up to lesson 12 today? If the kids have a question like that, heck, just go with it. Let's do it.
I was so happy that they came up with math, because then they were whipping out the pan balances again, and they already knew how to use them. And then
with the water and the soda and the milk, I can't say, well, today we're doing this lesson. No, go with their questions.
Yeah.
It's a Brooklyn School of Inquiry.
Yeah, crying out loud.
And I didn't tell them. I was like, how are you going to know the mess? Like, I didn't tell them how to do that.
They feel good that they came up with the question.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, I'll bring the milk, everyone wanted to bring all the liquids, and they just feel really involved in it.
And you know, I mentioned this last month in the meeting, and I'll mention it over and over again, the work of Peter Johnston, and giving kids agency, and naming, and noticing what they're doing, and how the learning that comes from that is so much more meaningful and sustained and sustainable than any kind of direct teaching and being on, you know, today is day 12, so it must be lesson 12 kind of thing. It's really very much at the heart of everything that we do here.
We want them to be in charge of their learning and be active in it. Okay, so 5th grade, I talked a little bit about the bird study. Just quickly, a traditional lesson would be just doing the scientific method and following the sequence of steps, and then make sure that the conclusion is supported by quantitative data, probably just taking number data and doing it in a lab. But I want to take science outside, even if it means through a webcam, because I don't think students have enough experience outside with nature. And so I said, let's do this. So I integrated some technology. I let the student wonderings lead to the questions that they wanted to study again. And then they did the planning. I also, I gave them the choice of working alone, in a partnership, or with a group of 3, because we often work in groups in science, and which is great, but there's always those kids who want to work on their own, and I want to give them that opportunity if they want to do that. It makes more work for me to check all those things, but I actually enjoy it, so I don't mind. And now we're looking at qualitative data. We're looking at observations, not just numbers. We did a peer review process where the kids brought in their drafts, and then they reviewed each other with me walking around and reviewing as well. And I said, you can look at some of the suggestions and implement them if you want to. It's not mandatory. We're just trying to help each other have a really good final product. Just like it would be in any science community. Like, look what I found out, and you sit and you talk about it. And we're going to have a science roundtable so the kids can share with the bigger community, their parents, what they discovered, which is what a scientist would do by publishing.
So just quickly a little bit about their grades and how we assess them. So there's three categories for K through 1, and kindergarten doesn't get an overall science grade. They just have the categories because we're happy that they're taking turns. They're just, you know, a lot of what's happening in the kindergarten science room is what's happening in a kindergarten room. So are they making observations, ask and answer questions, and demonstrate mutual respect and safety in the science lab? So I measure those through teacher observation, written work, and individual conferences with the teacher. So what that looks like is when, if it's not something that's too like teacher hands-on intensive, what I try to do is go through every single table in the classroom with my checklist and talk to every single child about what they're doing. So that's what the individual conferences are. It doesn't happen every single class, but it happens a lot. And then I have their written work, and then just so you know, mutual respect in the science lab and safety is, the mutual respect part of it is listening to me, listening to each other, sharing and taking turns. So if that's something they're working on, they might not be meeting the standards in that area. Okay, so the next slide is K2 and 3. A little more complicated. There you go. Okay. So they have 4 subcategories, qualifiers. Understanding science concepts is again with the teacher interviews, the written work. Second and third grade both have, well, first grade also has an assessment. They have written assessments too. Records with clarity and precision is really about their writing. And I feel like it's really important to communicate about your findings in writing in science. Use the science vocabulary appropriately, that's both verbal and written. Some kids are more verbal than they are written, and some kids express themselves better with writing, so I wanted it to be a balance of those. I also give occasional vocabulary quizzes. And then demonstrates mutual respect, it's the same thing. Listening to each other, sharing, and taking turns, and being safe. And you know, there's often specific safety things I give with specific tools. So.
I use the same criteria for all my grades. Demonstrates a solid understanding of scientific principles and process skills. Basically, are they getting the content, and are they asking questions, and are they thinking, and are they really involved in their learning? And then records observations neatly. That would be their science binder for the upper grades, their notebook for the lower grades. Are they taking notes down? Are they putting their thinking down on paper? Are they labeling their diagrams? Could anyone pick up that book and understand what they're saying? Engaging in lab work. You know, this is really important because when they're working together with tools, some kids think they're toys, and I try to, you know, tell them that these are tools and we have to respect them and work together and share. And that really is important in the whole lab work area. If they're fooling around, they're not learning. And so I'm really strict about that. And then demonstrates the qualities of a self-regulated learner. That's, again, taking responsibility for your behavior and for your motivation and your learning. And, you know, we do give them tools to help them with that. Some kids need a little extra help learning that. You know, I'll have like a separate conference with a kid about, I noticed this, how do you think we can work on improving you in this area? And I just wanted to bounce back to some of the projects that would fall into the first criteria if we're having a project. I also want to recognize that not everybody's going to express their learning the same way. For example, with the 6th grade project, they have a choice of how they want to show me how the water shapes the land. If you like writing, you can do a brochure that you would pick up at a national park. If you're more tactile, you can make a model that shows me that you understand those things. You could do a slideshow. You can do a photographic journey. Whatever it is, you could do a song and dance if you want to do it. Whatever it is that shows me that you understand the content, it's okay. So I don't want to say everyone has to write a report, because not everybody excels at writing a report, but they may excel at expressing it some other way. I think that's really important.
This is really related to Sandra Kaplan's work from USC, because she's done a whole lot of research on, I think she created something called the flip book of assessments. And especially, I mean, I happen to believe that it's great for all kids, you know, whether they're labeled as gifted or whatever they are, because so many kids who aren't labeled as gifted, in fact, are gifted. But the ability to, the invitation to share what they know and what they're able to do in many different modes is key to their success. So, and later on in their careers as students, in both middle school, high school, and college, that ability to really create their own project and express what they're known and able to do is really a game changer. So it's terrific that they get that chance to do that here.
It's fun, like you'll have one park and you'll have a brochure for that park, you'll have a puppet show for that park, you'll have a model for that park, and they all paint the same story, but just in a different way. I don't know. And they get into it because they don't feel boxed in.
And when you think about the way that we even learn as adults, how we jigsaw pieces of things together, when we're doing research as a staff, I can't do and know it all, but Sharon has a piece of it, Sid has a piece of it, I have a piece of it, and we sit down and we lay all of our pieces on the table. They do make a beautiful mosaic, and that's exactly what's happening in the roundtables. I can't wait for the science roundtables that are coming up, because the sense of what you get, this overall sense-around experience, is really rich. And the kids, when you think about incidental learning, and how more than 90% of what they take away as students is about that incidental learning, that's a jackpot.
I just stuck this in here for 4th grade parents, just so you know that there is a science assessment in 4th grade, a state test, and they get a break until 8th grade. That will be the next one, and then in high school. And I put the dates down here. It's a 2-part test. The performance assessment involves 3 experiments, and they basically get a booklet that says, okay, station 1, do this. Station 2, do that. And then put it together and answer these questions. So they move to 3 different stations. It's all hands-on. And then the written exam is June 1st. It's sort of like an ELA with science content. It's a lot of reading and about 43 questions or so. I'd say 37 are multiple choice and the rest are short answer. And I'm gonna let the kids see last year's test. It's totally legal, they're all online. And I'm gonna give them that test so they can just see what it looks like. So it's not a big surprise when they get it.
I just basically made this slide because I want you to take your kids hiking when it warms up. Parents are often asking me, what can I do to help my child's science education? And there's lots of great camps. There's lots of we live in New York City, so there's a wealth of things going on. I try to post things on the science news if I find out about a scholarship or a camp or something going on. I try to post it on the blog, and then if your child has a question about something, see if you can help them figure out a way to test it. Like do science with them. That's what it is. I want to know why this does this. Well, how can we test it? But really, I just want you to take them hiking and camping, and if you don't like hiking or camping, take them to the park, take them to a nature center, take them to a science museum if you don't like going outside. But take them outside even if you don't like going outside, because that's really what connects them to it.
I also think talking. I'm a parent, I have 2 boys in high school, and still at that dinner table, I know everything they did that day. And it's not like I'm holding a knife and going, tell me what you did today. We started it young. I used to say, sing me the story of your day, and then they would say, all right, first we did this, and then we did that. I think it's really important, don't wait for them to tell you, and don't accept yes and no answers. Don't even ask yes and no questions. What did you do in science today? Because I think sometimes we don't know what they're doing.
And you can look on the blog and say, oh, I hear you doing windups.
Yeah, tell me
your
more
windup.
about
What
that.
question, what variable are you testing?
Definitely subscribe to that,
blog.
to the blog. But I can't stress more having conversations about school. It's really, really important. And I just wanted, I don't have it in the slides, but the 6th grade's going on. I'm really excited. They're going on an environmental education double overnight to the Poconos, and we're leaving on March 31st. And we have a bunch of great programs coming up. I'm just so excited. It's kind of like going to sleepaway camp. It's that kind of a setup. So it's not glamorous or anything, but it's going to be great. We're going to do a night hike with no flashlights. We're going to do a 3-mile hike during the day, and pond study and forest study, and we're going to have a town hall meeting where they take sides on an issue and debate it, which I'm sure they're going to love. And we're going to do watershed study, and there's a bunch of things we're going to do. So I'm really, really excited about that. And I'm trying to get a garden together here. I got a small grant to start at least a little raised bed of like native plants. providing pollination for our native insects that are traveling through. So I'm working on that.
Are there any second grade parents here? Okay.
Okay, thank you guys.
We are doing the Hudson River trip in May. I just have to put the paperwork in for it, but I got a date. Okay.
Email me with any, if you ever want to just chat. I mean, Anthony, I forgot your first name. Trisha's son, Anthony, has gone really wild with the bird study. He set up a whole bird feeding center at his house, and he's been studying his own birds rather than using the webcam. He just set it up at home.
Now that's a nice example of differentiated instruction. Just saying.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, David, do I have, okay, thank you.
All right.